Do you feel successful? Maybe you feel successful in one area of your life, but do you feel successful in all of them? And if not, have you looked into why? Good stuff. We're going to talk about that. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker. And in this podcast, we talk to all sorts of successful people. There, we're bringing it back in again because we want to learn what they've learned, because behind every successful person is a mountain of failures and mistakes and learning, because you can learn so much more from that than you can from just getting it right the first time. And what a genius does is they learn from other people's mistakes, not just learning from their own. And that's why all of the listeners here are geniuses, because they want to learn what these other people have learned so they can avoid the mistakes or learn to fail faster through them. My guest today comes from Canada. She is a success coach and is going to really give us all the ins and outs of how to be successful in all the different areas of our life. Her business is called Joyful Roots Counseling or Coaching, excuse me. So Sherry MacEachern, welcome to the show.
Hi, Catryn. Thank you so much for having me today. It's so nice to be here.
It is so nice to have you. And I love that you are a success coach because as my regular listeners will know, I talk about success a lot on this show. And so it's really great to take this moment to really break down what that means, because when we say success or successful person, I'm sure everyone has an image that pops into their mind, and it's probably not the same one that we don't all have the same thought.
I 100% agree with you there. When I was starting my business and sort of trying to figure out, like, well, what do I call myself? This idea of success was so interesting to me because I think there's so many facets to success. And as we're growing up and we're creating kind of our foundation or our programming, our subconscious mind is being programmed. We get downloads from other people about what a successful life looks like.
Right.
That comes from our parents and our friends and our family and our teachers, but really society as a whole. So if we look at different cultures, I know you're a traveler, so like if we look at other cultures, some cultures really value a family as success. Some cultures value education. I think money is like a big one. And there's all these different kind of areas that we get sort of trained to believe is what success looks like. Growing up for me, I just thought money, like it's like at the end of the day, if I just had lots and lots and lots of money, then everything else would fall into place. And I had a really interesting experience where I moved and I had the opportunity to make a lot more money than what I had in the past. And I was surrounded by people who were making a lot of money. And it dawned on me really quick. It became apparent to me really quickly that there was so much money flowing, but people were not they didn't appear to be happy, fulfilled, joyful. And this was so confusing to me. And I also experienced it in my own life. Just because I started to make a whole bunch of money, life didn't necessarily, I wouldn't have classified myself as being super successful. So I had to go on this journey of figuring out, like, well, why? Why did I get trained to think this way? And then how do I have the courage to go out and figure out what is going to bring me the most fulfillment and satisfaction? And then how can I help other people do the same way?
It's so very true. Because when I think back to my corporate career, I came from engineering. I was in engineering and consulting for 20 years. And I had a lovely salary. It was very, very nice. My bank account was always full. I could swipe that credit card left, right, and center. Never thought about it. It was like, oh, my friend needs $8,000 for something. Like, okay, I can help you out with that. Like, I loved being able to be generous with it. I loved, never having to be concerned about, paying mortgage or grocery bills or, buying whatever my kids want. But I wasn't fulfilled. And I love that you said happy and fulfilled, because I think those are two words that have very different meanings that sometimes get used interchangeably. which is kind of an interesting situation to be in. So do you have a different definition of success now? And as you're working with clients, how are they helping to define theirs? I'd love to just give some examples of success so people can kind of listen in and like say, oh yeah, that one sounds more like me, or oh, maybe that one, just to help people kind of really think about it rather than just saying, oh, well, society tells me if I have this big fat paycheck, I'm successful.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think the first one that comes to my mind, I'll use my own personal
Please.
examples. Like I said, I thought money was the end all be all. Um, what I realized for me is, and there's many, many different areas of our lives that help us create success or fulfillment, as we talked about. For me, the biggest thing I identified was that a successful life to me was a big piece of it was doing work that I loved.
Mm,
So doing work that I loved, that I'm extremely good at, and that I can make an impact in other people's lives. So I had another career. We actually have an engineering connection,
do we?
but it's a way back connection. We might get to that story. It's also very tied to failure as well. So I feel like we should talk about that at some point. But my first career was in the field of accounting. And so very stable career. I liked it. Like I'm very analytical. I like the data. I like money. But it was really not fulfilling for me. So I found myself, Sunday morning was like the worst day of the week because I was
Mm,
like, oh my God, I have one more day off and then I have to go back because it was just not the right fit for me. And so success for me was, how do I find work that I just on Monday morning, I just can't wait to jump out of bed so that I can go and then I could work. I don't even care about retirement. Like retirement would be like when I'm dead, like I'll stop working because I just love it so much. Um, Success for other people. I have people really close to me, friends, um, that kind of define success by maybe their possessions.
mm,
So they might get a lot of I'm not sure what the word is, but like having a big, beautiful home
mm.
or driving like a really luxurious vehicle or, having a bag that's got like a really expensive label on it. Some people like possessions, physical
Yeah.
possessions.
Yeah.
Other people, titles, like what's your title? What's your education level? Like I have friends who collect, they're like, they have the alphabetical, what, alphabet soup after their name, right?
Soup after their name.
They have so many credentials, right? So education is really important to them. And I'm just rhyming off a few of them here, but I think the key is like to differentiate what people expect you to do versus what truly gives you joy, happiness, and fulfillment.
Mm,
For me, a great big giant house would be nice, but for me that's a bit of a trade-off in terms of like me making a career move that's going to create more overhead for me, that's going to limit me to have the ability to actually go out and find that work that's really, really meaningful for me.
yeah.
So some people would have the big house because somebody else expects them to have it, and some people would have it because they step inside it and it's like, oh my gosh, it's just like a dream come true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think of it. And as you were speaking of the different kind of ways, it made me think of the what's it called? The love languages, the five love
Mm,
languages. Like it
yes.
seems very similar because some people's love language is giving gifts or receiving gifts.
Yes.
And so it seems like success measured through possessions would really align for them. So that's a
Yes.
kind of an interesting thing. It might be a fun exercise to kind of map those out and maybe do some research, amongst your clients and connections on, is there a correlation here between this? Because it can give
Absolutely.
people some really great insight into that because we don't necessarily stop to examine it for ourselves.
Yes. I think, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please. I was going to change direction. So
Yeah, just one more add on to that is I think what I always ask people is when you're thinking about a goal, like something that you want to accomplish, does it feel like a desire? Meaning like you're longing for it.
mm,
Or does it feel like a should? Like
yeah.
I should do that. I probably should do that. We were talking about kids, like kids having kids early, and I chose not to have kids, but I felt for a long time I probably should. Like I think I can afford to have. Like there was all sorts of reasons to do it, but I just didn't have that longing, that desire.
Yeah.
Whereas I know some people who would just would die if they didn't have the chance to have children. So it's just really identifying. Does it feel like a desire, or does it feel like I should do it?
And shoulds feel so heavy.
Yeah, they are heavy.
They're so very, very heavy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know I don't want to wait for this engineering connection. I'm curious. I want to know now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. I'll tell you. So, okay. So let's roll back 25, 30 years, whatever, when I was in high school. So I was a really um, good student, I was really good at school. And people told me, you should go into engineering. Like you'll probably get a scholar, you got good grades in math and science, and there's lots of jobs for engineers, especially female engineers, trying to
Yeah.
get females into the workplace. So you should become an engineer. And I was like, literally, Kat, I swear to God, I tell this, it's so silly. I thought engineers drove trains.
Oh, but they do.
I mean, they do. But that was my only reference point for engineer. I grew up in like a blue collar town, like small town. I was like, really? And
Do you
but
think
I was
I should
like,
drive trains?
yeah. But I was like, they said there's lots of jobs and you'll get paid really well. And I was like, cool, sign me up. I'll do that. I'll drive a train if I have to. So anyway, I get to university. Now, I had always had really, really high grades in school. School was the thing that I could do. I wasn't athletic, I wasn't super cool, but I was like good at school. And when I got to university, I was totally unprepared for how hard first year engineering was going to be. And so all of a sudden, my grades went from being, in the 90s to like in the 60s, 70s. And I had an absolute identity crisis.
Mm,
Now, I wasn't even technically failing, but for me, I could not handle, like if I wasn't the smartest kid in class, I I didn't know who was I, right? It was my whole self-worth.
yeah.
And I remember my mom being like, Sherry, just keep going. You're passing, like you're not failing. And I was like, it was so challenging for me. And so I switched. I didn't drop out of school, but I changed my program and I moved
Right.
into business and accounting. And that was how I was like that for a large chunk of my life. Like if I wasn't really, really good at something, like instantly, I was not partaking. Like I was not doing it because I could not handle being bad, right? And as I got older and a little bit wiser, like now I look back and I'm like, wow, what a shame. Like I would not try anything new. I would not experiment with anything because I just had no tolerance for failure.
Mm. I love that we're bringing this up because, um, most people looking from the outside in would think, oh gosh, I wish I could be as good at school as Sherry.
Mm,
Not knowing like we never know what's going on in someone else's head. We only ever look at it through our own lens of expectations, of experiences, of perception. So it's really great to talk about it from those kind of things. Um, especially when people are like, oh, you're always good at this or that, and then that becomes your identity. And it's so hard as a parent to not praise children for being smart. Like, oh my gosh, you're so
yeah.
smart. And
Yeah.
because you're proud of them.
Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to praise people for um, being good at something. Um, and everyone's different, right? Like everyone gets motivated and reinforced in different ways, but I think we do a terrible job in our society of talking about the hard times. One of the reasons why I love your podcast so much, I think I mentioned it a little bit before the camera started rolling, is that when it comes to business, like you're talking about the good, bad, and the ugly, right? Like let's talk about the hard things. Just because something is hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but I think it's really unkind not to talk about it. They made the correlation between parenting and business. It's like I don't have kids, but the one thing I noticed with when my loved ones started having kids was like how hard it was
Mm,
and how everyone felt like they were the only ones going through it because we live in this highlight reel kind of
yeah,
society where like we're just talking about the successes and the wins, and that's good because we should celebrate, and we also need to be real about it's not all like butterflies and roses. Like there's
right.
hard stuff. And if it's worth it, you'll do the hard stuff.
And this is okay. This is a topic that I absolutely love. And thank you, first of all, for the kind words. I truly appreciate them. But our society has such a messed up time with the word hard because
Oh,
there is such an expectation like, well, if you work hard, you'll be successful,
yeah.
right? Like it's hard. You have to do hard work. And so I
Mm.
think that sets us up for this expectation of that it has to be hard. Like, okay, it's really hard being a business owner and being a wife and being a mother and being, a sister and a daughter and all the other hats that we wear. So I must be successful because it's hard.
Oh, like kind of like the grind, like I'm grinding. So is that what
Yeah,
it feels like? Yeah.
it's a really interesting concept of hard, because sometimes it's not necessarily just hard, but we use hard or like the way we also use busy.
Oh, like the badge of honor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, have you been?
Yeah.
I've been really busy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I'm very important because I'm very busy.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting concept. And, do you work with mostly people in Canada or do you work with people in the US and kind of all over?
I'm open. I would say more so North America. I don't have any clients outside of North America. The Zoom world has opened up the market.
Right?
But then of course I have people in my local network, of course, that I do too. But yeah, yeah. Canada, the US, I would say is the majority.
So how do you see some of the um, just differences? I mean, I can think of just how many differences there are just regionally within the US, kind
Mm.
of with the subculture and kind of expectations that way. So what are some of the differences that you see just between, where your different clients are? And do you think there's a correlation between that, or it's just everyone's own personal experience?
That's a great question. I haven't really noticed. Actually, let me think of that a little bit differently. What's interesting is because, as I mentioned before, I moved from the east coast of Canada to more western, and the economy is very different.
Hmm,
So, on the east coast where I grew up, very beautiful little island that I grew up on, lovely.
that sounds so
Not
lovely.
Yeah, thank you. Um, Not great economically speaking. So like not a whole lot of jobs, um, not necessarily the greatest income, and lots of people competing for jobs.
Mm,
When I moved to the West, and I'm in oil country, so I live in a small town that's like we're a one-trick pony, like it's an oil town. And so high salaries, we're remote, not everyone wants to live here. So the companies are more competitive in terms of like recruitment, right? Like you're not competing against other employees necessarily. There's lots of
lots of
jobs and lots of
incentives.
opportunity, lots of incentives. That's a great way of putting it. And so I would say the biggest difference is, um, you know, the belief systems around money. And the thing that I noticed the most is here, people make so much money, but they still have that scare. A lot of people still have that scarcity mentality around money, even though their salary is probably like 4 or 5 times what they used to be making. They still believe there's not enough.
Mm. You see that too with people who have lost a lot of weight. They still pick like, the double XL clothes off the rack because the programming of their mind hasn't caught up to the physical changes as
Yes.
fast. So it's kind of a
Interesting.
similar situation.
And it's that blueprint, the 0 to 7 is where that our subconscious programming gets, and
Yeah.
that's hard to overcome. That's like our hard drive, if we're comparing it to a
Some
computer.
deep tracks have been
Yeah, you can put your
created.
software in there, but the hard drive is in there. Yeah.
We were talking about education, and you have a lot of different certifications within the coaching space. You've got executive coaching, holistic coaching, retirement coaching. I mean, all these different things under the umbrella of success coaching. Is there a piece that you love working with the most, and why?
Well, my mission, my overarching mission is really all about helping people create what is that blueprint of success for them, like we talked about before. Um, then I have, like I said, different streams. So holistic health coaching, this money piece is a new program that I'm building, and retirement, leadership. But really, it's all in an effort that's just giving people streams to pick, right? So if
Mm,
somebody's like, if health is an issue, or wealth is an issue, or a career is an issue, then we can get fine tuned on, what's the strategy. But at the end of the day, it's all about, like, listen, I always say, like, life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer we get to the end, the quicker it goes. That, life goes fast. Like, the older we get, the faster it goes. So I'm really passionate about just helping people, like, make the most of it, right? Like, don't let it pass you by. We're all going to make mistakes and all sorts of things like that, but, like, let's be intentional about this one precious life that we've been given, and
mm,
how can we really maximize it?
mm. Yeah, it is a gift, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a gift. Well, let's dive into a little bit more of the ugly. I don't think we've
Mm.
really gotten into that kind of piece of your journey yet. But what kind of has that looked like for you? And has that been more of an external or an internal journey of getting to where you are now as a success coach?
Yeah. The ugly piece.
Yeah. What's your ugly?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, well, I think the what I figured we would talk about today is a little bit about um, helping people identify. I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but helping people identify what their lifestyle costs them, what their ideal lifestyle will cost them. So when I started my business as a side hustle like a long time ago in 2016. So I was always an employee, and I started my coaching practice as a side business. And so I didn't have to worry too much about the income that the business was generating for me, because I had my full-time income, right? Making the switch from full-time employee to full-time business owner taught me a lot of lessons in terms of cash flow, like how to manage cash flow.
Sure.
And I had a hard lesson that I learned kind of a while ago around this. My first entrepreneurial endeavor was I started investing in rental properties, so real estate. And as I moved to this town, as I told you, made that move, I found myself in a really, like, red hot housing market. And it was very turnkey. Like, it was like, get some properties, increase your cash flow. And that's what happened. It happened really quickly for me. And I was naive. It was the first time I'd ever done it. And, in 4 years, I went from, like, having no assets to having, like, $1.5 million worth of rental properties. And my cash flow had exploded. Like, I would pick up my tenants paid me in cash, back then. So I would pick up my rent at the end of the month, and I felt like Tony Soprano. Like I had like this stack. I swear to God, I couldn't make a deposit. Like I had to break it up into like two deposits. Like it wouldn't all fit. It was the bomb. Like it was the best. And of course, I was naive. I had never done it before. I was in a boom market, like a boom real estate market. And I didn't see that it had been booming for a really long time. I didn't predict things were going to change. And the bottom absolutely dropped out of this housing market that I was in.
Ugh.
And literally in a very short period of time, my cash flow it just shrunk so bad. So I had to learn this lesson the hard way, um, to really identify, okay, like my money is different now. What do I need to do? Um, number one, to not go bankrupt. Uh, and number two, like to really fine tune on like money and the attachment to my values. So
Mm.
like I was wasting a lot of money. I was just saying yes to everything. Not everything was bringing me was adding a lot of value to my life. And so I had to really go through that exercise myself. And then that was quite a long time ago. And then when I made the jump from full-time employee to full-time business owner, it was like, oh yeah, when we're an employee, our income is pretty consistent, right? The paychecks get deposited into our bank account weekly or biweekly or whatever, monthly, and they're kind of the same. Like if we're on
Right.
salary, it's always the same. If we're wage, it might fluctuate a little bit, but we know how much is coming in. As an employee, like it can be like a roller coaster ride. Some months you might be making bank, and then there might be periods where you're making zero. So, and that's very emotional for people. Like that can be very, very stressful. And in business, when we're stressed, it really cuts us off from our creativity, from our
Mhm.
flow, from our brilliance, because we're in survival mode. So I wanted to create this program to help people get kind of like an anchor on what their personal life, this is not business, this is what their personal life costs them, so that they can have a plan in place to really be able to ride the waves.
Oh, and it must be so helpful having your accounting background to
Yeah, and
bring that into people.
yeah, it's so interesting. And I'm not a financial advisor. Like, I don't give financial advice. This is basic stuff. But I think money is two things. Like, number one, money is logical, right? Like, money is just data, it's just numbers on a sheet or a screen. But what we don't talk about as much is money is so connected to our emotions.
Mhm.
And so people will say things like, I'm not good with my money, or, oh, I get overwhelmed, I'm not good at math or stuff like that. And it's like the logical side is actually, it's pretty straightforward. Like we're not talking about investing in the stock market. This is like a basic budget. But what's challenging for people is that there's just so many emotions around money, and money affects everything.
Mm.
And coming back to our internal subconscious programming from when we were children, like what were the stories around our money? And if we have negative emotions like guilt or shame or fear or scarcity around money, um, people don't want to look at it, right?
No, they
So,
don't. No, they don't.
yeah.
And what's coming to mind as you're talking about it is how similar, like thinking in terms of calories, like
Oh my God.
money and calories kind of being the same thing, because it's just numbers. Like you want to lose weight, you just have less calories.
Catryn, it's like you're in my head. I always make that comparison. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that's so crazy that you said that. I'm so happy you did. Because I always make that correlation too, right? Yeah. And so in with that logic, everybody would be walking around with a six pack, right?
Right.
If it was just calories in, calories out. No, it's because food is emotional to
Yep.
us, right? It's the
Yep.
exact same thing. And so we have to address the emotions, like the bigger, deeper seated barriers. if we
Yeah.
want to make progress. Anyone who's not talking about that, like, you're gonna hit a wall pretty quickly.
At some point, because it's going to rear its head again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I well, this has been such a great conversation, Sherry. I have enjoyed it so very much.
It flew by so fast, didn't it?
It does. It
Yes.
absolutely does.
Yes.
So please let the people know, let the audience know that's listening, who are the ideal clients that you work with?
Okay, thank you. So my ideal client is somebody who has, on the outside, who has a great life, who has a great life. Definitely who on the outside or on paper looks like they're checking all the boxes, career, education, family, home, all those lovely things. Um, but that might just feel like there's something more out there for
Mhm.
them. And they might know what that something is, and or they might not have a clue. Like, they know that there's something but they don't know what it is. um, my work is really about helping people identify, what's going to give you more joy, more satisfaction, more fulfillment in your life. If you don't know, that's okay. I have lots of exercises that we can go through to help get some clarity, and then move through the process of, the change process of understanding why that's important. What are the obstacles that are getting in your way? What action do you need to take? And then my job is really to show up and be kind, supportive, and a very supportive accountability partner to help people actually get the clarity and then do something about it, so that they can accomplish whatever it is that is going to really make their life a lot better.
Mm. And who doesn't want more joy, more
Hmm,
fulfillment? I mean, come on.
I know,
Like
right? Life is
there,
short.
it's there's always room for more.
Yes, agreed. And it doesn't have to, sometimes we overthink things, right? Sometimes joy can come in the smallest, simplest little things that we're just overlooking because we're looking at the next big, I don't know, Louis Vuitton purse we're gonna get or something like that. No judgment, but like, it doesn't have to be a big one. It can be simple. We can find joy like every single day.
I agree completely. How is the best way for people to get in touch with you? Because I know they've listened to this interview and want to talk to you. So how can we help them do that?
For sure. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, or my YouTube channel, which is, I think you're going to put put the details in the notes below. Okay.
I will.
My name is really hard to spell, so it's Sherry MacEachern on LinkedIn. Joyfulroots.ca is my website. And then Kat, you'll put the link to the YouTube channel. It's Joyful Roots. Oh my God, 4944 or something like that.
Yes,
On
I will put
YouTube.
all of that in there. And thank goodness that Joyful Roots is so easy to spell.
Yeah, that's way easier. I wanted it to be my name, and I thought no one will ever find that if I make that my website name.
I feel the same way about Catryn. People misspell it a lot,
Lots
but
of ways to spell it. Yeah.
exactly. Well, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, and all the wonderful content and the wonderful vibration that you're putting out into the world with this podcast. I've really, really been enjoying it so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It took me a while to find this joy, but
Yeah,
it's
good
amazing.
for
Once you
you.
do, what happens?
It is, isn't it? Yeah, that's so true.
And to the listeners, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you are finding moments of joy in your life. And if not, please reach out to Sherry because there is more that you can be experiencing. This isn't all that you get. You get to have so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, which I'm sure you did, please make sure to like it, share it, rate the podcast if you haven't already, because more people need to have more joy in their life. Because wouldn't we have a better world if that were the case? Until next time, everyone, take care.